The Galactic Combat Academy had stood for 3,000 cycles, training the finest warriors from every predator species in the known universe. Its crystalline spires pierced the violet sky of Apex Prime, and within its halls, young predators learned the ancient arts of Jan, combat, strategy, and dominance. Dean Carthax, a towering Vrexian with obsidian scales and eyes like molten gold, ruled this institution with iron claws and unwavering expectations. No prey species had ever walked these halls, until Ilara Ven arrived. She was human, a species so new to the galactic stage that most databases still classified them as unranked herbivores. Small, soft-skinned, with blunt teeth, and no natural weapons to speak of. When she'd first applied as an instructor, the Academy Board had laughed. When she'd insisted on a demonstration, they'd watched with morbid curiosity. 3 minutes later, their champion combat instructor was unconscious on the mat, and Ilara was hired. That had been 6 standard months ago. Now, Dean Carthax stood at the edge of Training Arena 7, his tail lashing with barely contained fury. Before him, 12 of the Academy's most promising cubs, young predators from 8 different species, stood in perfect formation. Their eyes were sharp, their postures disciplined, their movements synchronized with a precision that seemed impossible for trainees so young. At the center of the group stood Rook, a Krell cub barely into his 2nd cycle. His species was legendary. Apex predators with razor-sharp claws, enhanced reflexes, and a pack mentality that made them devastating in combat. Rook's silver fur bristled slightly as the Dean approached, but his stance remained steady, controlled. Professional. Explain, Carthax growled, his voice reverberating through the arena. 6 months ago, this cohort was the worst-performing group in Academy history. Undisciplined, aggressive, incapable of working together. He gestured with one massive claw at the formation before him. Today, they defeated the senior combat division in war games. They shouldn't have lasted 10 minutes. They won in 47. The cubs remained silent, as they'd been taught. Carthax's eyes narrowed. Who trained you? As one, 12 pairs of eyes shifted. Not their heads that would have broken formation, just their eyes, flicking to the side of the arena where a small figure sat cross-legged on a supply crate, calmly eating something from a container. Ilara Ven didn't even look up. She was focused entirely on her meal, using 2 thin sticks to pick up small portions of food with a dexterity that seemed at odds with her species classification. The human? Carthax's tone dripped with disbelief. The prey creature? Rook's ears twitched, the only sign of his discomfort with that assessment. He'd made that mistake once. In their first week of training, he'd called instructor Ven prey to her face, sneered at her soft form, questioned why the Academy had allowed such weakness through their doors. She'd smiled at him. That should have been his first warning. Humans, Rook had learned, smiled for many reasons. Joy, amusement, threat. The key was in the eyes. When Instructor Ven smiled with her teeth showing but her eyes remained cold and calculating, that was when you needed to pay attention. You think I'm prey? She'd asked him that day, her voice soft as silk and twice as dangerous. Let me teach you something about Earth, Rook. About my homeworld. She'd pulled up a holographic display. This is a persistence predator. Humans. We're not the fastest, we'd lose a sprint against most species in this room. We're not the strongest, a Vrexian could tear us apart. We don't have claws, or venomous fangs, or armor plating. The hologram shifted, showing a human running across an endless plain, following a 4-legged creature. But we don't stop. Ever. We chase our prey for hours. Days, if necessary. We're not designed for the quick kill. We're designed for the inevitable one. Our prey runs until its heart gives out, until it collapses from exhaustion, until it gives up, lies down, and waits for death, because continuing is more terrifying than stopping. She'd looked at Rook then, and her smile had widened. So when you call me prey, understand this. On my world, we didn't just survive among the predators. We became the apex by being more patient, more adaptable, and more absolutely relentless than anything else that walked, crawled, or flew. We didn't outmuscle the food chain. We outlasted it. Rook hadn't called her prey again. Now, standing before Dean Carthax, Rook understood what the Dean didn't. Instructor Ven wasn't just a teacher. She was a predator, teaching cubs how to think like something more dangerous than any of them had ever imagined. "She's been training you?" Carthax demanded, his disbelief morphing into something closer to anger. "Teaching you? What? Exactly? How to run away?" "No, sir," Rook heard himself say, breaking protocol. "She taught us how to win." Carthax's attention snapped to him. "Elaborate, cub." Rook chose his words carefully. "She taught us that strength without strategy is just noise. That the best warriors don't rely on instinct alone, they adapt, they think, they turn their opponent's advantages into weaknesses." "Predator philosophy," Carthax scoffed. "Nothing new. She taught us patience," a Vrexian cub added from the formation. "That sometimes the best attack is the one you don't make yet. She taught us teamwork." Another cub chimed in. "A Skarax with bioluminescent scales. That 12 coordinated fighters will always defeat 12 individual warriors. She taught us to be afraid," Rook said quietly. That stopped Carthax cold. "Afraid? Warriors don't. She taught us that fear is information." Rook interrupted, knowing he'd face consequences later, but needing the Dean to understand. "That acknowledging danger doesn't make you weak, it makes you prepared. She said humans feel fear constantly, but they don't let it stop them. They use it." Across the arena, Alara finally looked up from her meal. Her dark eyes met Carthax's golden ones, and she offered that particular smile, the one that showed teeth but held no warmth. "Dean Carthax," she said, her voice carrying despite its softness. "Your cubs performed admirably today. They've learned well. You've made them soft," Carthax accused. "Overthinking. Hesitant. I've made them survivors," Alara corrected, setting down her food and standing. Even at her full height, she barely reached the Dean's chest, but somehow she seemed to fill the space. "Your old methods produced fierce warriors. Mine produce warriors who live long enough to become veterans." She walked toward the formation, and Rook noticed how every cub's eyes tracked her movement, not with fear, but with respect, with recognition. "You know what humans are best at, Dean?" Alara asked. Stopping beside Rook, she placed a hand on his shoulder, and he felt the steady confidence in her touch. "We're best at taking impossible situations and surviving them anyway. We're best at looking at creatures bigger, stronger, and faster than us, and asking not, 'Can we win?' but, 'How will we win?'" She gestured to the cubs. "These young predators have natural gifts you could never teach them. Claws. Strength. Instincts honed over millions of years of evolution. But I've given them something their evolution didn't. Human stubbornness. Human adaptability. Human refusal to accept that any fight is unwinnable." Carthax stared at her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he laughed a sound like grinding stone. "The other instructors are terrified of you, you know. They don't understand you." "Good," Alara said simply. "Fear breeds respect. And respect breeds attention." The Dean's expression shifted, something almost like approval crossing his features. "Continue their training, Instructor Ven. I want to see what else these cubs can learn from humanity's playbook." As Carthax departed, Rook looked up at his instructor. "Instructor Ven? Thank you for—" "No thanks necessary, Rook," she interrupted gently. "You and your cohort did the work. I just showed you a different way to think about fighting." She paused, then added with that dangerous smile. "Besides, I'm curious to see what happens when we combine predator instinct with human ingenuity. The galaxy might not be ready for it." Rook's tail swished with anticipation. Looking at his fellow cubs, seeing the same excited determination in their eyes, he suspected Instructor Ven was right. The galaxy definitely wasn't ready, but they would be.